Hello, welcome back to another episode of the TFR Podcast. We are back once again for another one of these, and we're on another new YouTube channel. It's almost a new YouTube channel by the episode at the moment, but let's hope this one stays for a little bit longer. But YouTube has not been our friend, but we are also back on Spotify and your other audio platforms. And it's Patrick that joins me today. How are you doing, Patrick? I hope you're keeping well.
Yep, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. How about you?
I'm the same here. Brilliant stuff. Good all round. We're going to be reviewing a little bit of the Canadian Grand Prix that happened a week or so ago now, and then later on looking ahead to the up-and-coming Austrian Grand Prix this weekend. But it was indeed George Russell that picked up his first victory of the season last time out at the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. And it was really a statement performance from Mercedes across the board, because it was Kimi Antonelli who also picked up his first podium in Formula 1 after only 10 races into his career. There was the big drama, though, with the McLarens. We had Norris and Piastri finally collide, and we'll get onto that a little bit later on. But let's start off with Mercedes' success. I think they deserve the first word on this podcast. Patrick, what did you make of Russell's drive and Antonelli? And did you think that this was their kind of changing of the momentum of their season, a real kind of statement, if you like?
I mean, it's definitely a good step forward. Although, granted, if we take a look at the last few years, Mercedes has been historically pretty good at Canada. Last year, George Russell also got pole. Even though he got like a tied time with Verstappen, he set the time first, and he did pretty good in 2024 as well. And that Mercedes really seemed dialed in for Canada. And we've seen glimpses of just true pace from Mercedes, but I think this is really the first time they've ever been able to really capitalize on it.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely took a turn for the good, if you like, with these recent upgrades. I think they've seemingly got on top of their tyre wear, which is unfortunately one of the biggest things in F1 these days. Of that's what you need to get on top of and kind of solve that problem, and you'll find pace naturally with that. And yeah, you're right, Mercedes did do well here last year. He got the pole position at this track, George getting that, but they didn't quite get the victory because of the rain that we had in the race, and it was a very kind of a jumbled up race, if you like. But then this year it was perfect dry conditions, and with this upgrade as well, it was a real test of the car, and they really could find out, if they could make it work again. And we've seen this in this regulation, that teams do seem to continue that trend of, if they're good at this track, they'll be good at it next year, and so on and so on, as long as they keep the same philosophy of the car. And George just didn't really come under much threat, didn't he, Patrick? I mean, Verstappen put the pressure on a little bit at the start, but then once he got that gap, and there was a safety car late on as well, just to really confirm it, he was all sorted, wasn't he? I mean, is that maybe part of these regulations now, where if you survive the opening phase of the race and your tyres are good, it is very difficult to get back in front, or was this genuine?
I think it's probably a bit of both, because the Red Bull in general seemingly does have issues with tire wear. And I mean, the big talk of this current regulation cycle it was initially the flexor wings, but then we found out about McLaren's cooling strategy for the brakes and the wheels, and I think that's been really playing a factor, is keeping those tires in the optimal temperature window. Just like when we do our TFR eSports, tire temperature management is really, really important. So I think it's really just managing your tire temps at this point.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's a shame that it's kind of got to that point with F1 where things like that hold such a significance. But then I guess if that's the ticket, if you like, to find more pace, then that is what the teams will use. And it's going to be fascinating, really, with Austria this weekend, with a much hotter temperature as well. Although it wasn't exactly cool in Canada, it's going to be interesting if that still remains the case. There was a lot of talk before the race, actually, Patrick, about the front row that we had. We had Verstappen and Russell on the front row, with Russell on pole and Verstappen second. And there was all this talk because of Verstappen's penalty point situation. If he gets in a collision, then that could be a race ban. There was all this hype. Literally, on the Sky coverage, they had an intro to the program and the race program just for this battle. And then it totally didn't happen, didn't it? I mean, we had a complete letdown. And I don't know, did Max maybe just get the best out of what he could for that race? Or, was maybe second place actually quite a good result for him in the end?
I think he got the most out of that Red Bull, because that Red Bull car, even though granted the recent update package that they brought in a few rounds ago, I think it was the Barcelona package, gave him a bigger setup window, which has been historically an issue with the Red Bull cars of this regulation cycle. It's just such a narrow setup window that you don't really have a lot of room to experiment. But I think Red Bull is on a bit of an upward trajectory, but second place is really the best they could have hoped for in that race in Canada.
Yeah, which is crazy that we're saying that. We're saying, that the Mercedes was just a bit too quick for Verstappen, and it just shows how good they were in Canada and how good Antonelli was as well. Let's have a word on him. His first podium, he's the third youngest driver ever to step on an F1 podium. How about him? Would he have maybe came under a bit of fret from Piastri and Norris if maybe they didn't have that crash? I mean, we'll never know. But was this, a result that it's been coming and this is just finally the moment?
Yeah, I think 100% that's the case. Antonelli's been really good. I mean, he got that sprint pole in Miami, although unfortunately it never really amounted to anything. But Antonelli's had that pace, and he's been pretty much keeping his nose clean, and all the DNFs he's had this season were to no fault of his own. It's just the Mercedes powertrain just not wanting to cooperate with Antonelli. I knew that was one of my predictions kind of coming into the season, was that at some race, Antonelli was going to get a podium. And I mean, McLaren in general just seemed to struggle last weekend in Canada. The car really it was like the first weekend where the car really was just not the best car on the grid like it has been for arguably a majority of the season.
Yeah, it was fascinating, really, with the McLaren, because this is a team that's been so dominant on every type of circuit so far this season, but not in Canada. They were kind of really on the back foot by their standards. But yes, Antonelli, a superb drive from him. The first of many podiums, let's say that. Although, we say that, there was the big talk of today, was this Mercedes pursuit, if you like, of Max Verstappen. It's came back again. I can remember talking about this at the Austrian GP last year, and it's came back around again. Toto Wolff directly in contact with Max Verstappen and his representatives, with the contract situation with George Russell still looming heavily over their heads, of just delaying it, really. They're saying they're not delaying it, but they are, really. They're not signing the dotted line just yet, because they are going after Verstappen. And Toto Wolff even came out today saying that it could be a Russell-Verstappen lineup for next season. What do you make of all that situation, Patrick? And also, if Toto Wolff's saying that, obviously he could be quite flippant in saying that. He might not exactly mean it how he says it. But what would happen to Antonelli? I mean, that would be a very strange one. But on the first one there, what do you make of the whole situation?
I mean, the rumor mill has been flying around too. I've even seen rumors of Charles Leclerc heading to Mercedes. I think Mercedes is really just exploring their opportunities at the moment, just seeing like who's on the market and who's willing to maybe jump ship. Mercedes has been on an upward trend for the last few seasons. They started out this regulation cycle in 2022 with a borderline abysmal car. And then 2023 wasn't really much better. 2024 was a good step in the right direction. And 2025 has definitely been the best season of this regulation cycle. But I think they're trying to get back to how it was, because Mercedes, as you know, had 8 constructors titles back to back to back to back. Eight constructors titles in a row. And they obviously want to get back to winning ways. And there's a lot of talk about the Mercedes power unit being the best power unit for the new regulation cycle. And so I think Mercedes in general are just trying to keep their eyes open. But I would be very surprised if they actually dropped Antonelli, because they put in so much money. I mean, if they wanted to keep Antonelli on the back burner, I feel like they would have sent him to Williams or one of their other customer teams for a bit, with Williams being the likely pick.
Well, I've heard talk as well that they apparently could put Antonelli out on loan. But the question is, Patrick, where would he go on loan? That's what I don't understand with this one. Williams have signed an Albon. That's not going to change. Aston Martin are going with Honda engines, so they're not even going to be under that Mercedes wing. I mean, the only one you could maybe say would be Alpine, I guess, because they're going to take up Mercedes engines soon. And I mean, they've almost got an even worse driver saga going on over there. So surely, Patrick, the right thing here is just quit the talk, get the contract signed. You've got a settled team there. I mean, I'm not trying not to go on a rant here, but Russell he's entering his prime almost at the minute. He is performing so well, has done so well this season. He's still got plenty of years left. And Antonelli, is like you say, he needs to be there. He's got the future. He's going to be the next star. Do they need Verstappen? I mean, as crazy as that sounds, I know Max is the best, arguably, on the grid, but do they need a Verstappen in that team, Patrick?
I mean, I think back in the day, before he became a Red Bull driver, Verstappen does have Mercedes history. He was a Mercedes junior, I believe, but they just couldn't give him a seat in time. So Red Bull snatched him up, and then we all know the rest is history. So, I mean, I guess it might be a bit of seller's remorse from Toto Wolff, maybe wanting to get back his lead junior driver, potentially. But, I mean, here's another side of the coin, too, that we haven't really mentioned yet. If they do decide to go with Verstappen, there's a chance that they could keep Antonelli and then Russell is out of a seat. Which, totally. Russell is basically Mr. Mercedes right now. So, I mean, I know there's that picture of him talking with Flavio Briatore at Alpine, but, I mean, Alpine's a mess right now, and I can't really see anybody really wanting to go to Alpine.
No, and you're right. The more likely, I think, scenario is that it would be Verstappen in for Russell. I think Mercedes would be a bit crazy if they did kind of suddenly get Antonelli out the seat. But they'd be equally crazy in my eyes if they got rid of George, because you're right, he is Mr. Mercedes. He's been there throughout his career since the F2 days, been under that Mercedes wing, since F3 even, I'm pretty sure. And he was patient himself when he was in the Williams. He was ready to get in that Mercedes, from when he did that secure race in 2020, filling in for Hamilton. He was ready right back from then. And then now, he's got to win this season and he's leading the team. And I think he's doing a good job leading the team. But then there's all of a sudden now this strange thing of, well, actually, we might not keep him. We'll get Verstappen. And Verstappen is great, as that's stating the obvious. But I don't know. I'm not convinced. You put Verstappen in that Mercedes, he's going to wipe the floor clean like he does at Red Bull. For a kickoff, Antonelli's not a bad driver himself, but I think that Red Bull, Patrick, is absolutely tailor-made for Verstappen. In some eyes, Verstappen should maybe almost just... Why would you leave Red Bull? That team is absolutely behind you. Not saying that Mercedes wouldn't be, but the car and everything, they literally sacrificed the second driver at Red Bull just for Verstappen in terms of the design of it. And I do feel quite strongly on this that I think Russell is getting a bit disrespected here. I don't know. Do you agree with that kind of statement?
I mean, especially considering that Russell's been basically carrying that Mercedes team since Hamilton left. And here's another thing, too, we got to think about. Hamilton, he's been a bit on the struggle bus when he switched to Ferrari. He's been with Mercedes for so many years that when you're with a team for many years, I mean, it doesn't even matter. It's not even just a Formula One thing. It's any sport. It could be football. It could be baseball. It could be any sport out there. But when you switch to a new team after being on one team for so long, there's going to be an adjustment period. So even with Hamilton being considered the greatest of all time and Verstappen also being considered one of the greatest of all time, I mean, jumping from a team that you've been with for a decade at this point that has basically been behind you, sacrificed a second driver for you to do good in that car, and then just go to a completely different team that operates in a completely different manner, I just don't think it's the right call for Verstappen or Russell, honestly.
No. I couldn't agree anymore, Patrick. I think it's bad for all parties, and just Toto Wolff, behave yourself. Just do the right thing here, and just stick with what you've got, because the Mercedes have got a great lineup. They've got a great young lineup that is just almost reaching that kind of good balance where you've got a driver that isn't quite there yet with Kimi, but he will be. He will get there. But George is here and now right up there at the top end of the drivers that you can actually get. You know, he's Ferrari's Leclerc, Red Bull's Verstappen. You know, they need to just think about this. I mean, it's not affecting George's form, which is one thing you could say that it could have. It could have gotten in his head a little bit, but it's not. And we'll see how this one develops. If you were to put your money on this, Patrick, what do you think that Mercedes 2026 lineup is looking like?
I think they're going to keep the same lineup of Antonelli, Russell. I mean, that's just the smartest decision. Because I think Antonelli already has a multi-year contract, which once again, multi-year contracts don't really mean much in modern F1, but I think just consistency is what most, if not every team needs going into this new regulation cycle, because there's already so much changing with the new chassis, the new engines, the new tires, and then throwing especially a top tier team like Mercedes. I mean, just changing something that drastic. I mean, I just don't see it happening, because even then, where would Russell go? Because surely they wouldn't put Russell on Red Bull, especially with the farm Isaac Hadjar's been on, but that's a topic for later. I think it's going to be Russell and Antonelli.
Yeah, I agree. I can't, as well, what you're saying there, I can't see Russell going to a Red Bull, or the only kind of thing I could really see, and this is a stretch, is a Russell kind of going to Aston Martin or something if they finally convince Stroll to move out the door. But yeah, I think Mercedes should just keep their lineup, and I think that will happen, like you say, Patrick. So that is that covered. Next up, we're going to cover, actually, the big moment. Now, you'd think that was the biggest talking point from that last race, but actually this was somehow even more, because this has been bubbling up and waiting to happen all season, and every TV broadcaster and media outlet have been absolutely waiting for this to happen. And in some ways, it kind of happened in a very strange way, and it was indeed the collision between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and it wasn't fighting for the win, that is for sure. It was fighting for fourth place in the closing stages, and it was Norris who caught up to Oscar and made I thought it was a very good move, actually, into the hairpin on Piastri, or maybe caught the championship leader napping, one would say. And then they had an amazing drag race, let's say, down that back straight towards the chicane, Patrick, because they both had DRS. And then obviously Piastri was a little bit better on the brakes there, managed to keep the inside line. Norris then came back, was in the slipstream, and then all hell broke loose down the start-finish straight. It was a lot of people saying it was very similar to the 2011 crash between Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button. It kind of was similar, same part of the track, but it was different in many ways, I would say. But this was all on Norris, wasn't it, Patrick? I don't think there's any doubt in that.
Yeah, I mean, at least Norris owned up to it and didn't immediately start trying to play the blame game like some other teammates might have, or in other teams have done in the past. But yeah, it was just Norris was a bit too optimistic on a move, trying to get past him on the start-finish straight, and then just ended badly. But I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that was going to happen at some point sooner or later. I mean, McLaren have the best driver lineup on the grid right now. They have the most consistent. They have the quickest drivers right now. I mean, aside from Verstappen, and you could argue Russell in that match too. But I mean, they have a very consistent lineup. They have a very strong lineup. And when you have two drivers that are top drivers in Formula One on the same team in the quickest car, then I mean, we can also always look back into Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton at Barcelona 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, the same kind of thing happened. Fastest car, two extremely rapid teammates, and they're both 1 and 2 in the championship right now as well. So it was just going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean, this could have been both cars out, because if this was a few years ago where that barrier didn't extend out down that start-finish straight, Norris probably would have hit the pit lane wall and then would have continued on after in that kind of run, that grassy bit separating the pit exit and the kind of first couple of corners. He may have gone straight into Piastri, because we've seen, I want to say something really random, like the 2014 Canadian Grand Prix when you had Felipe Massa, Sergio Perez, and I think it was a Red Bull, had a crash at that first corner. And you kind of go straight on, and that's, I think, why they've put this extra extended bit of barrier at this part, is for a crash like this, because Norris just ended up just sliding along the barrier there, and obviously stopped him from going straight on and potentially going into Piastri, because that is the thing for McLaren. This could have been double DNF, the thing they feared all along, the papaya rules and all that stuff. This could have been the ultimate. But in the end, Patrick, this really helped Piastri, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I mean, Norris already has a lot of pressure on him because he was the favorite to win the championship going into the season. Start out the season strong with a really solid win in Australia. And then not too long after that, Piastri just, as soon as Piastri took that championship lead, he hasn't really looked back and hasn't ever really had to look over his shoulder all that much in his current championship lead. So, and I mean, obviously, Lando is probably the most criticized F1 driver that is currently on the grid right now. I think people criticize him more than Lance Stroll nowadays, which if you would have said that a year or two ago would have been a very crazy statement, but it's just true now. Norris is, and I mean, there's a lot of hate towards Lando as well, which I think is unwarranted. I mean, he's not an angel by any stretch, but he gets into his own head too much, in my opinion. And I think that's going to really put a damper in things for his championship hopes.
Yeah, I agree. He gets an unbelievable amount of hate, Lando does, and it's weird, isn't it? I mean, that's maybe for another podcast, but why that is, why he gets so much hate, arguably, like you say, the most out of any driver on the grid these days. But there is, without doubt, this kind of mental weakness with Lando these days of the mistake is always there. And we've seen it already a few times, well, a lot of times actually, not even a few times this season, whether, it's the poor qualifying results, it was the jump start in Bahrain, it was the crash at Saudi, and, Miami kind of got a bit schooled by Verstappen, you could say, and so on and so on. He's really he's got that fragile element now with the mind games, if you like, and the racing side of things. If Lando's on pole and he's had a good start, because that's been another element before his starts in races, then he's no stopping him almost, because he's got nothing to worry about. But if he gets in a battle with another driver, he just seems to fall to pieces. And that is, I think, the big difference with this season, Patrick, in terms of the championship. Piastri is ice cold. He does not make mistakes on a regular basis, and he is unflappable by any of the drivers. Verstappen as well, cannot, I don't think even he can get under Piastri's skin. And Norris, I think, just really struggles with that. I think he really struggles the fact that there's somebody there that can just keep going with the performances. Piastri himself, Patrick, was having a pretty rubbish Canadian GP, you'd have to say, but I mean, in the end, he's came away with a big lead now in the championship. And how do you see that going now for the future races? We're into this another triple header now, and this is a critical part of the championship. We're obviously not even halfway through yet, but is Piastri, really the hot favourite now, or are you still kind of sitting on the fence a little bit?
I think Oscar's definitely the favorite right now, because I mean, mistakes are formed under pressure, but so are diamonds, and I think that's exactly what Oscar Piastri has been this season. I mean, they've thrown everything at him and the kitchen sink on top of it. So, and he's basically inflappable, like you said. He does not react to pressure, whether it's from his teammate, whether it's from Verstappen, whether it's from anybody on the grid. Oscar rarely makes a mistake, and consistency is what wins you championships, and I think that's exactly what Oscar has been. He's been consistent. Lando is a very quick driver too in his own right, but he's just been so inconsistent. And I mean, everything you brought up, the jump started in Bahrain, the crash in Saudi, and even last season too. I mean, if we look back at the Singapore Grand Prix, there's times where Lando almost makes a mistake under no pressure at all. Because if you remember from the Singapore Grand Prix from 2024, he was miles ahead, but still almost wrecked a few times.
Yeah.
Even with like nobody even remotely near him. He was in a different zip code essentially.
Yeah.
And he still almost made mistakes. Piastri, on the other hand, hasn't really had that issue this season. So I think Piastri is the hot favorite, but Lando could change that if Lando, steps up the consistency a bit.
Yeah, I feel like we could almost be saying that for the rest of the season, where it's like if Lando wins this weekend, then he's gonna be able to turn it around. And I've really thought that win at Monaco, actually, a track where we say about Singapore last year, even if you are leading out front, you can just throw it away in a moment. But he's not really managed to shake off these mistakes, and I admired the fact that he just accepted it was his fault straight away. That could have got a lot more messy, if you like. Could have accused Piastri of putting in the wall or anything, which he absolutely did not. But he could have gone down that road, but he didn't. He just took the blame, took it on the chest, and has to come back in Austria with a real kind of strong mindset to get back on track, literally, because, if he has another one of those, then I think Piastri is almost kind of got this, and McLaren will also be quite nervous if there is another clash between those two, that they may step in. They don't want a Rosberg-Hamilton scenario forming, but I don't think Piastri's that kind of driver for that to happen anyway. I think he is just so cold and calculating, a little bit like a Kimi Räikkönen from the past, where he will just get the results in on the board. Elsewhere, from Canada, it was a bit of a mediocre performance again from Ferrari, so there's probably not too much to say on them. It was more of the same, more bang average results in P5 and P6, which obviously would have been worse if Norris finished the race. Hamilton actually hitting a groundhog, that was part of his struggles of why he was in a bit of no man's land. A mention to Fernando Alonso, though. He was doing very well in Canada. He was right in the mix, actually, with the top runners in qualifying. He came away with a P7 finish in the end, and his kind of point scoring now is really starting to kick into gear. He was put right at the very bottom of the standings, pretty much, Patrick, which felt wrong. But now it seems like that Aston's took a bit of a turn, if I could say so.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit of the Adrian Newey influence, but I think for the most part he's focused more on the 2026 car and the next gen of regulations. But yeah, it's good to see Aston back on form. I mean, their downfall was shocking by any account. I mean, they were getting podiums, almost getting wins on a few occasions. Lots of talks that if the strategy was better, Fernando could have won Monaco 2023 in the Aston Martin. And then from the next year, you can start to see that decline. And then this year, it's just been, the car's basically been nowhere for a good chunk of the season. And it's weird to think that, like, Williams are now in that position that Aston was back 2 years ago as, like, the best of the rest, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting that the midfield battle now in this season has now become quite unpredictable. You really don't know which team is going to be at the front. We've seen the likes of Isaac Hadjar being that front midfielder. He was well off the points in Canada, and it was, Alonso. Hulkenberg again in the points after his unbelievable drive in Spain, again gets points in Canada, which I'm a huge fan of that. I'm all for Hulkenberg getting back in that kind of points finishes, and the Sauber as well. That's good for them, I think, the fact that they've took a good turn of their form. We had Ocon in 9th, Sainz in 10th, so that's 4 different teams there, kind of rounding up the rest of the points, if you like, outside of the top teams. And yeah, it's going to be interesting kind of where that all develops, because it is starting to get a little bit more bunched up in the Constructors' Championship. We've got Williams a little bit further ahead in 5th place with 55 points, but then we've got Haas and RB now level in 6th and 7th on 28 points. We've got that's Aston Martin in 8th on 22 points, and then we've got Sauber on 20 points behind. So we've got 4 teams there, Patrick, that are all very tight together. I mean, if you were to pick a team out of those 4, who would you think is going to be kind of the one to watch over the next few races?
I think Sauber is definitely that team to watch. I mean, from last year only scoring points in the penultimate round of the series with Zhou Guanyu in Qatar, to now getting 3 points finishes on the board already this season, 2 in a row with Nico Hülkenberg. I mean, I think Sauber has definitely been an upward trajectory. Gabriel Bortoleto hasn't really been in no man's land either for the last few races. I mean, strategy kind of messed him up in Barcelona, but I mean, in Canada, he wasn't super far off the pack. Not really.
Yeah.
And he was quick in practice earlier today.
Yeah, what about young Gabby Bortoleto? Do you think he's going to score points this weekend, or is it still going to be a little bit of time yet? I mean, it's such a tough midfield this season. It is quite hard for him to get in the points, but if Hülkenberg can do it, I think Gabriel Bortoleto can do it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about this weekend, but I think it's only a matter of time before we see Gabriel Bortoleto in that top 10, even if it takes like a Brazil 2024 incident where it's just a super bizarre race where, I mean, you had 2 Alpines on the podium, which really saved their season last year. But, I mean, I think it would take some stuff like that for Gabby to score this time around. But, I mean, hey, last time George Russell got a free win because of Verstappen and Norris boxing each other around the Red Bull ring. I mean, that's just the thing about the Red Bull ring. It's basically a hotbed for carnage.
It is, yeah. It's a funny track, really, because I put this in a post today on the socials about some of the kind of the best moments or iconic moments from the Austrian Grand Prix. And I was saying in it that, yeah, it's weird that there is so much action that comes from this track because it is the shortest on the calendar. It's the least amount of corners. So you'd think on paper, well, there's not too many places on the circuit for things to happen. But it does, I think because of the nature of how it runs up the hill, if you like, to turn 3, and the turn 4 as well has got a lot of action that happens there. It just promotes exciting races because it's not a guarantee, because it's that kind of like hairpin style corner. It's not a guarantee that you can always make the move easy into there. And speaking of, actually, we'll kind of fully move on to Austria now. Have you got any favourite moments from the Austrian Grand Prix? I've not exactly prepared you for that question, Patrick, so you're a little bit on the spot here, but has anything come to mind?
So, this one isn't directly related to the race, but it was last year's race, and I was actually helping at a kids' eSports event. I was watching like several rows of computers. They're playing Apex Legends or something, but on my phone was the Austrian Grand Prix from last year, and I look down, and I see Norris has got a flat tire, and Verstappen's got a bunch of damage. I'm like, what? So I guess that has to be my favorite moment, just because of how I wasn't in a position to actually react to it, because I'm supposed to be watching students play Apex, Fortnite, or whatever they were playing at the time.
Yeah. It was a crazy moment, that is for sure. And I think as time passes along, we'll kind of realize even more how kind of bonkers that was. I mean, I always remember the 2016 crash at that same corner with Rosberg and Hamilton, because that was on the final lap as well, which was even more insane. But yeah, we've had some great races, actually. Verstappen's won here now 5 times, so he's going after a 6th, I believe, this weekend. But I remember I think it was 2nd win at this circuit when he, let's say, aggressively barged Leclerc off the track at that turn 3. And so, yeah, that is I have to say, if there was a seat I could pick at the circuit, I'd absolutely go in that grandstand next to that corner, because you're almost guaranteed there's something going to happen at some point. So, yeah, we'll be hoping that is the case. It's expected to be a fully dry weekend, plenty of sunshine and hot temperatures as well into the 30s, apparently, on the Saturday and Sunday sessions. We had Alex Dunn today do a run for, I think it's Dunn or June. I think it's Dunn.
I
The
think
Irish
it's done.
I think it's Dunn. Dunn, he's kind of, I don't know what they actually call it. I think it's the young driver kind of practice
It's like
session
a rookie
thing.
FP1 session, yeah.
Yeah. It's along those lines. It was the mandatory thing for McLaren, and he stepped in. He's the F2 Championship leader, actually, which maybe gone slightly under the radar for those that don't fully pay attention to that series. But he jumped in and immediately in FP1 with P4. Now, obviously, this is only a practice session. We can't read too much. We've seen Williams be in the very top end of the practice sessions all season, and I've been yet to see them get on the podium. But it was a great performance from Alex, wasn't it? I mean, he's, the first Irish driver since 2003. It must have been a very proud moment for him.
Yeah, I mean, considering Alex Dunn's reputation coming into the practice session, I mean, a lot of people, because, I mean, Monaco was definitely a low light for Alex. Had quite a few crashes, quite a few incidents. He's a kind of an incident-prone driver, but I think today in this FP1 session, he did really fantastic. Got P4, which, I mean, granted, he's still in a McLaren, but still, first time in an F1 car, at least to our knowledge, and got P4, and also kept the car out of the wall, which, I mean, Antonelli on his first practice session binned it at Monza, so, I mean... Yeah, it's not as easy as, I mean, it's not very easy to keep an F1 car on the track if you're brand new to driving a Formula One car. So I got to give a lot of credit to Dunn.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you can think it's a McLaren and, of course it'd be that quick. But he was literally a fraction off the pace of Piastri, who's, the championship leader and multiple race winner this season. So, very impressive, and he, again, already now immediately probably puts his name in the hat for other teams, such as the likes of Cadillac, actually. I want to get your quick kind of prediction on Cadillac, because they're still yet to announce their drivers for next season. They've been speaking, actually, at the Austrian GP, I believe it was with Sky F1, about their situation. They are kind of focusing on making sure they've got the car ready for next year, and so that's why they're delaying the announcement of drivers. But the big rumours are Valtteri Bottas is heavily linked with Cadillac, and there's plenty of money behind the team, actually, because it's the owner is the I believe he's got big shares in Chelsea Football Club. I think also the LA Dodgers and many other sport franchises, and they've clearly got the cash, so they could go for two experienced drivers here. But what is your prediction, Patrick, for those Cadillac drivers with the likes of Alex Dunn, pressing today? Could he maybe be in the mix, or who? What is your pick for them?
If Alex Dunn did get a Cadillac seat, I think it would be as a reserve, just because they'd have to cough up some money to McLaren for McLaren to let him go. Because he is a McLaren junior driver now. I mean, personally, I think it's going to be, which this may be kind of a boring answer, but I think it's going to be Bottas and Checo. Two very experienced drivers, two race-winning drivers, and both two drivers that are extremely marketable. I mean, Bottas is well-loved across the globe, and he's been in a lot of marketing stuff as well. And obviously, we know Checo does have quite a big financial backing behind him. And Checo is, granted, he did struggle in the Red Bull for the last 3 years, give or take. But Checo, when it comes to mid-pack vehicles, he just does incredible things in a midfield car. I mean, Sakir 2020 was a masterclass drive from Checo. So I think, and Valtteri Bottas has done some pretty solid stuff too in some less than deserving cars. But yeah, I think Bottas and Perez will be the lineup for 2026. Maybe Alex Dunn and Felipe Drugovich as reserves, but yeah. I mean, if they were to get a rookie, I would say it's probably either Vesti or Drugovich, just because they've driven the hypercar program.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it'd be Checo Perez, and I think a younger driver, which would be Drugovich. I think they will go for that. An all South American lineup. Actually, I'd need to check the stats on if that's ever happened before. But yeah, I think Bottas, it could happen, but I think, and I know I said about the money element, so in some ways they may not need to worry about that with Perez. But I think Perez just has that, element of he has been in a midfield team before and has really led them up the grid and has overperformed. Bottas has done that, but I would more say when he was back in the Williams, when in his younger part of the career, and then he did maybe a brief bit at Alfa Romeo at the beginning. I'd say Perez has got a more established thing there of midfield running, which is probably where we would expect Cadillac to be. And then Felipe Drugovich, I mean, he needs a seat. I feel sorry for him, Patrick. He's been sat on the side with that Aston Martin team now for years, and he's clearly good enough for F1. And I'd like to see that lineup, but it's still, they're holding it back at the minute. The last kind of bit of news I wanted to discuss before we get on to our predictions is to do with the new F1 movie. Obviously, that came out in the last week or so, or the last few days, actually. Obviously, with Brad Pitt starring in the film. It's been under works and kind of been getting made now for years because they were literally at the races back in 2023. But I think to do with some of the writer strikes and other kind of implications and issues, it got delayed, and then now is finally out, and it's actually got a heck of a lot of media attention. They had the world premiere in New York, they had the other premiere in London, and I haven't seen it yet myself. I don't know if you have, Patrick. Have you seen it by any chance?
For North America, it just came out like just today, so I plan on actually going to the theaters in about a few hours to go watch it.
Wow. Oh, well, you'll need to, for the next episode of this podcast, you'll need to tell us your thoughts, because I've not seen it yet. But are you kind of all for this kind of thing, or are you more on the fence of, well, that's not quite right, or this isn't how it happens? How do you see these kind of films? Is it a good? I mean, it obviously is a good thing for the sport. It brings more eyes to it. But are you a fan of the kind of film being made?
I mean, if it's anything like how the Gran Turismo movie was, where it wasn't 100% accurate, at least from my little bit of knowledge I have, I haven't driven an actual race car, so I can't be totally critiquing it, just like I've never driven an actual Formula One car. But as long as this is not super, like, where you could tell it is just more for show than doesn't really show much about the actual sport, if it balances story and sport, then I think it's going to be good. Because if it's too much sport, then it's basically just a documentary at that point.
Exactly. There has to be a bit of drama and kind of fanciful elements into the film just to make it, a bit exciting. Like you say, it's not Drive to Survive. It is, an actual film and its own story, if you like. I think that, Brad Pitt being a 60-odd-year-old man is probably a little bit inaccurate to be driving an F1 and making overtakes on Charles Leclerc. I did see there was a clip of his car. I don't know. It was like from that 2023 Mexico GP of the Mercedes overtaking Leclerc. I think it was Hamilton actually that made this overtake, and they've completely replaced the car with the Sonny Hayes character's Apex GP car, and I don't know. I think it's something to watch, and we'll see what your thoughts are on it in the next one, and I'll make sure to watch it at some point. But it's a good thing for F1, I guess. It's plenty of PR for the sport in general. Right, let's get on to our predictions. It's that time of the podcast. It's the Austrian Grand Prix we're going to predict this week. And let's dive straight into it, Patrick. We're going to go with pole position first. So who is going to be your pick for pole this week?
I'm going to go a bit on a limb here, and I'm going to say George Russell goes 2 for 2 in pole positions here.
Ooh, I like it. That would be a statement. That would be a big one. Any particular reason why?
I mean, Mercedes, they've shown that they've had some pretty good pace on this track even last year. Granted, I know the whole thing is like Mercedes only operates good in cold temperatures, but On a lot of these European tracks, like even Spa coming up, they performed super well there, and it's not necessarily a cold track. And I think Russell's got a lot of momentum after that, honestly, quite dominant win in Canada. So I think he's got a lot of momentum, and I think he's got the car to do it.
Okay. I'm going for a bit more of a safe pick with this one. I'm actually going to go with Lando Norris. I think he's got quite a good record at this circuit. I know he obviously crashed here with Verstappen last season, but he does have good pace, and in the only practice session he did today, he was top of it. And so, yeah, I think Norris is going to get pole. But what about your race predictions? How your podium looking like, Patrick?
I think it's going to be... so far, I have not gotten a single one of these correct. I am going to go with Oscar in first, Russell in second, and Lando in third.
Ooh, okay. So Piastri's going to fight through and beat Russell. Is that going to be like a kind of a straight battle between those two, or is this more like the McLaren's going to have pace over the long runs and they'll kind of get ahead of Russell?
I think more than the latter. I think the McLarens are just going to have pace in that long run, and the Mercedes just won't quite have enough, but they'll be clear of Red Bull and Ferrari for certain, I think.
Okay. Well, I think for my race predictions, I'm going to go with Norris in third. I think then Russell in second. And I actually think Verstappen will win this race. I think he's got a very good record at this circuit. And, I think it's the kind of track that he brings himself up to another level for. And hopefully we'll get another Verstappen-Russell battle, because I'm all for that. And the drama that comes with that. I think Piastri, I'm not sure about his record at this circuit. I don't think it's too amazing. I mean, I know that this car is very different now, but I think, Canada, that kind of did tell me something, that Piastri may be, not quite as good as he's been so far this season. So I've gone for a little bit more further down the order, but I certainly think Ferrari will be rubbish as well. Not that I get any extra points for that. So yeah, that is our predictions then for this week's Austrian Grand Prix, and that is pretty much this podcast for this week. So thank you, Patrick, for joining me once again. And if you have enjoyed this episode of the TFR Pod, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. It is, again, like I said earlier, a new channel, so we need as many of you to subscribe to help making these videos and pods. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like as well. If you're listening on your audio platform of choice, you can also follow us on there. And we'll be back next week to review the Austrian Grand Prix, and then we'll be looking ahead to the British Grand Prix at that time of the season again, where that comes around. So we'll be back in the next one, and we'll see you then.